Hello and welcome to the continuation of the discussion for the unit na ano data gathering. So here we'll start on the new topic, which is the observation. So this is another type of data gathering. So what is observation? So this is useful at any stage during the product development. So early in design, observation helps designers understand the user's context, task, and goals. So by basically observing on how they interact, diba? Interact with your program, interact with the interface, etc. Observation conducted later in the development, for example, in evaluation, may be used to investigate how well a prototype supports this task and goals. So gina-observe na ang users directly by the investigator as they perform the activities or indirectly through records of activities um, that they are studied afterward. So, ging-record na to ang observation, and then gina-study na siya later. So, see, observation may take place in the field or in a controlled environment. So, that in controlled environment usually are labs. So, in the former case, individuals are observed as they go about their day-to-day tasks in the natural setting. So in the latter case, so for controlled environments, individuals are observed performing specific tasks within a controlled environment, such as a usability laboratory. So we'll discuss the different types of observations. So first, we have the direct observations in the field. So these are observations in the field can help fill in details on how users behave and use technology. So gina-observe ni siya directly, di ba? There is the user, and then there is someone that directly observes on how the user interacts. So, understanding the context provides important information about why activities happens the way they do. So, kung ano man da ang behaviors ng user on what they do, di ba? On the meaning on that, on their actions. So, however, observation in the field can be complicated and harder to do well than a first appreciated. So observations can result in a lot of data and sometimes may be tedious to analyze and not very relevant. So may possibility na siya nga over na ang masobrahan ng data nga mag-gather nyo using the observation. So for direct observation to dapat in-structure na siya ang frameworks for observation in the field. So we have events that can be complex and rapidly changing. So there is a lot of observers to think about. So many experts have a framework to structure and focus their observation. So the framework can be quite simple. Meron tayong example nga practitioner's framework for use in evaluation studies that focuses on just 3 easy to remember items. So that item is the person, so who is using the technology at any particular time, and then the place and where are they using it, and then the thing. So what are they doing with it? So ano man ang interactions nila. To experience observers may prefer a more detailed framework, diba? Simple framework to kayo na. So ang ilang things na gina-note are just 3. So may iba man experience observers, diba? So damo na nila attention. Things nga gina-attend nila. So, that is relevant to the context of the activity. So, meron space, ano man na ang physical space, ano man na ang structures ng physical space, ang actors, what are the names and relevant details of the people involved, activities, ano man na ginabas ng actors, objects, ang physical objects na gina-interact ng actors, acts or ang specific individual actions, diba? Events, so ano man da ang special event nga katabo, time, sequence of events, man so at that time, ano nang ginaobraya? So goals, what are the actors trying to accomplish? Feelings, what is the mood of the group and of individuals? So muna ginatrack sang experience observers compared sa simple observation. Okay, so next is we need to determine the degree of participation. So depending on the type of study, the degree of participation within the study environment varies across a spectrum, which can be characterized as insider at one end and outsider on the other end. So where a particular study falls along this spectrum depends on the goal and on the practical and ethical issues that constrain and shape it. So an observer who adopts an approach right at the outsider's end of the spectrum is called a passive observer. So ga-observe lang siya outside the maybe environment or outside the actor, beside the actor lang. And they will not take part in any of the study environment at all. So wala sa dira, wala siya ga-exist sa study environment. So it is truly be a difficult passive observer in the field simply because it's not possible to avoid interacting with activities. So with passive observation, so this is more appropriate in lab studies. So an observer who adopts an approach at an insider end of the spectrum is called a participant observer. So meaning, attempt sila to participate on various levels depending on the type of study to become a member of the group being studied. So participate sila on the actions that the actors do. So start sila sa conversation. So ask sila on what they are doing. Difficult niya, this is a difficult role to play since being an observer also requires a certain level of detachment. So while being a participant assumes a different role. So as a participant observer, it is more important to keep the two roles clear and separate so that observation notes are objective while participation are also maintained. Mayroon example, observer may not be skilled enough in the task at hand. The organization group may not be prepared for an outsider to take part in their activities, or the time scale may not provide sufficient opportunity to become familiar enough with the task to fully participate. Okay, so once ma-determine na ng degree of participation, so next is we need to plan and conduct an observation in the field. So ang framework diri introduced in the previous section are useful for providing focus and also for organizing the observation and data gathering activity. So mayara the framework na discuss. So choosing a framework is important, but there are other decisions that need to be made, including the level of participation, to adapt, how to make a record of the data, how to gain the acceptance in the group being studied. So dapat accepted kanila. So comfortable na sila nga ara ka sa ilang assignment be, so as they work. So how to handle sensitive issues such as cultural differences or access private spaces, and how to ensure that the study use different perspectives. So perspective from the people, activity, the job roles, and so forth. So one way to achieve this last point is to work as a team. So this working as a team can have several benefits. So each person can focus or can agree to focus on different people on different parts of the context, thereby covering more ground. So observation and reflection can be interweaved more easily when there are more than one observer. So multiple observers na ang present. And then more reliable data is likely to be generated because observations can be compared. So ma-compare na observations from one observer to another. The results will reflect different perspectives. So different person, diba? So may different perspective na sila nga mahatag. So once in the throes of an observation, there are other issues that needs to be considered. So my example, it will be easier to relate to some people more than others. Although it will be tempting to pay attention to them more than others, attention needs to be paid to everyone in the group. So observation is a fluid activity, and the study will need to refocus as to progress, diba? In response to what is led. So fluid activity, so meaning ga-change na ang focus in the observation. So ga-change man ang actors, diba? So ang different nga actions man ang ginaobra, different ka settings, different ka objects in the environment. So ga-change na siya. So ang focus na sa observer, so dapat ara to sa sa important nga actor, important nga objects, etc. So observing is also intense and tiring activity, but checking notes and records and reviewing observations and experiences at the end of each day is important. So where an observation lasts several days or weeks, time can be taken out of each day to go through notes and other records. So medyo tedious man ni siya nga nga work. So compared sa interview, di ba? Tedious man na sa interview. So with observation, so we have this what we call the ethnography. So ethnography has traditionally been used in social sciences to uncover the organization of societies and their activities. So a large part of these ethnographic studies is direct observation. But interviews, questionnaires, and studying artifacts used in activities also feature in many ethnographic studies. So in this way, ang aim ni is to capture and articulate a participant's perspective of the situation under study. So a distinguishing feature of ethnographic studies compared to other data gathering is that a situation is observed without imposing any a priori structure or framework upon it, and everything is viewed as strange. Or strange, or diba, the first time mo lang na siya nga makita or ma-observe. So next is we have a direct observation in controlled environment. So observers using a controlled environment may occur within a purpose-built usability lab, but portable labs that can be set up in any room are quite common. So when we say portable laboratories, so this can mean that more participants take part because they don't have to travel away from their normal environment. So observation niya in a controlled environment inevitably takes on more than uh, on a more formal character than observation in the field, and the user may feel more apprehensive. So as with the interviews, it is a good idea to prepare a script to guide how the participants will be greeted, be told about the goals of the study and how long it will last, and have their rights explained. So using a script, diba, with the use of script ensures that each participant will be treated in the same way, so which brings more credibility to the result obtained from the study. So the same basic data recording techniques are used for direct observation in the laboratory and field studies. So ma-capture ka photographs, take down notes, ma-collect video, collect audio, and so on. But the way in which these techniques are used is different. So in the lab, the emphasis is on the details of what the individuals do, while sa lab, diba? So what the individuals do. So while on the field, the context is important, and the focus is how people interact with each other, diba? How users interact with technology, with the environment, with the objects. So with observations, so may direct observations in controlled laboratories. So there is a technique called the think aloud technique. So one of the problems with observation is that the observer doesn't know what users are thinking and can only guess from what they see. So that is why pwede na sila ang users pwede na sila ka-think aloud. So think aloud nila, so they are telling to the observers on what they are doing. So step by step na siya. So observations in the field should not be intrusive, as this will disturb the context of the study is trying to capture. So this limits the questions being asked to the participant. However, in a controlled environment, the observer can afford to be a little more intrusive. So the think aloud technique is a useful way of understanding what is going on a user's head or a person's head. So next is we have the indirect observation. So with direct observation, so mayroon participants or observers. So next is we have the indirect observation. So this it refers to tracking the user's activities. Sometimes direct observation is not possible because it is too intrusive or observers cannot be present over the duration of the study. And so activities are tracked indirectly. So indirectly, so hindi na usually mabalance ang So wala na, hindi na doon the alert, hindi mabalance ang user nga they are being observed. The diaries and interaction logs are two techniques for doing this. So let's proceed to the first technique, so which is the diaries. Participants are asked to write a diary of their activities on a regular basis, including things like what they did, when they did it, and what they found hard or easy, and what their reactions were to the situation. So, gina-take down nila. So, ang si users na ang ka-take down sa ilang experience. So, that experience, so in the diary, so, which will contain useful information for your study. That being said, so diaries are very useful. So when participants are scattered and unreachable in person, so when the activity is private, for example, in the home, or when it is related to feelings, for instance, emotions or motivation, so pwede na nila ma-express in the diary. So ang diaries, mayroon na siyang several advantages. They do not take up much research or time to collect data. So most likely, so this is the activity of the user. They do not require special equipment or expertise, and they are suitable for long-term studies. So in addition, templates like those used in open-ended online questionnaires can be created online to standardize the data entry format, diba? So pwede nyo na siya ma-format ang responses. Yeah, so not really the close-ended questions. But pwede nyo siya ma-format by using these templates. So the diary studies heavily rely on the participants being able and remembering to complete them at the assigned time and as instructed. So incentives may be needed, and the process has to be straightforward. So that is it for the diary. So next is we'll discuss on interaction logs, web analytics, and data scrapings. So interaction logging uses a software, diba, to record users' activity in a log that can be examined later. So may software na kita ngagalag sang user actions on a specific nga application or software or program. So later on, so pwede nyo na ma-access ang interaction logging software, and then makita nyo na kung na ang different actions nga ging obra sang user. So a variety of actions may be recorded, such as the key presses, the mouse or other device movements, time spent searching a web page, time spent looking at a help system, and task flow through a software module. So with the key advantage of this logging activity is that this is unobtrusive, so provided system performance is not affected. So kaya we are using another application on top of a application. So, but it also raises ethical concerns about observing participants if this is done without their knowledge. So, dapat mabalaan nila that their actions are being recorded. So, visualization tools are therefore helpful for exploring and analyzing this data quantitatively. Algorithmic and statistical methods may also be applied. So another advantage is that large volumes of data can be logged automatically. So hindi na i-manage hindi na pag-input sa observers, di ba? Automatically ginalag na siya sa imong program. Okay, so that's it for the observation. So now let's proceed on the last topic, so which is choosing and combining techniques. So of all the topics that we've discussed, or all the techniques, di ba? So we can either choose, diba, ma-determine advantages and then disadvantages, and also combine one or two more in order to get the necessary information. So with combining data gathering techniques into a single data gathering program is common practice when collecting case study data. So ang benefit nire is using a combination of methods is provide multiple perspectives. So multiple perspectives, diba, that so sa survey, so mayroon man sa multiple perspective dira sa survey. Sa interviews, mayroon siya multiple perspectives. Sa observation, mayroon man. So choosing which data gathering technique to use depends on the variety of factors related to the study goals. So muna, madepende man nagyapon sa study goals nyo. Sa goals ng inyong study on why you are trying to collect the data. So wala na sang right technique or combination of techniques, but some will undoubtedly be more appropriate than others. So, based na sa inyong goal. So, here, this table provides an overview to help choose a set of techniques for a specific project. So, it lists the kind of information obtained, diba, such as the answers to specific questions, and then the type of data. So the data, for example, mostly qualitative or mostly quantitative. It also has some advantages and disadvantages for each technique. So note that different modalities can be used for some techniques. So mayroon na techniques for interviews, focus groups, and questionnaires. Good sila for exploring issues. Si focus group kay collecting multiple viewpoints or multiple perspectives. So arada, ang good for the goal nila, and then the data that you will be collecting, advantages and then the disadvantages. So let's next slide kay ang iban nga or the remaining nga nga techniques. So in addition, technique choice is influenced by practical issues. So the focus of the study. So what kind of data will support the focus and goal of the study? So gina-influence mo na siya by interaction design activity and then the level of maturity of the design. And then the participants involved. So characteristics of the target user group, including their location and then availability. Also the nature of the technique. So does the technique require specialist equipment or training, and do investigators have the appropriate knowledge and experience? And then last is we have the availability of resources. So expertise, tools, support, time, and money. So muna maka-affect na sa choice sang technique nga i-implement nyo on the data gathering. Okay, so that's it for for data gathering na unit. So I hope you've learned something. So thank you for watching and see you on the next one. See you on the next lecture.